that's happening, let us know before the match starts. We'll make sure it's all reset. With the posts over here, for the emptying these posts, to be considered empty, it's considered at the end of the match if all these rings are off. So if your robot can only grab 2 at a time or 1 at a time and take them off, as long as you get this other one off before the end of the match, this post is emptied. At the end of each match, if your robot is in contact with a game piece, let's say you have this piece, and you just got it over there, but you're holding it with your robot, that piece will not count. So pieces that are in contact with your robot do not count. So one of the things you guys want to make sure you don't do is at the end of the match, don't drive into the back goal here, because anyone that your robot is in contact with will not count. Let's see. Oh, I'll go over the points really quick. So in the logo, as you guys can see by these really nice signs here, if they're in there, 1 point. If they're on the hanging ones, or the straight up and down post right here, then they're worth 5 points. If there are 2 or more of the same color and that there's no other color on that post, then these rings then become worth 10 points each. If you guys release both of the latches on here, and this goes, that's worth 20 points. One of the things that you guys cannot do is during the match, you cannot take any of these rings off of here. You can release both of these. Once they're both released, if it gets stuck on there or whatever, but both of them released and the tray is down, if it's still on there, you can touch it. But until those 2 are released, you cannot take these rings off of here. So I think that about covers it. Anybody have any questions for me? Yes, so her question was, if you release the tray and not all the rings come off of there, is it still considered released? Yes, if both of those releases have been pressed, it's still released as long as it comes down. Does that make sense? 1 second. All right, so you got a question right here. So the question was, if at the end of the match, if your robot is touching the pole but not touching the rings, do the rings still count? Yes. The only rings that won't count and the only time that things will not count is if your robot is in contact with those rings. The other time that I think I didn't mention to you guys, let's say your robot is holding that ring. If it's still over the post when your robot's touching it, this is not emptied. Does that make sense? Okay, I think I have time for like one more question. Let's go over.
If you're trying to take the 3 rings off the post and 1 falls out of the match area, does it still count?
All right, so the question was, if you're trying to empty the post and 1 or multiples of the rings fall out of the playing field, does it still count as emptied? Yes. As long as there's no rings on there, it doesn't matter where they go. All right, yeah. Who else had a question? In the back there? So if you make contact with them and they don't get released, like they don't get knocked out of there, if you just hit them, it'll just be, hey, remember you're not supposed to make contact with those. So I'll give you a reminder about that. If you knock rings out of that and they go out of bounds, let's say, I will remind you guys. But remember that if I remind you of the same thing more than once or twice, then the next match, if you're doing the exact same thing, you could be disqualified. But if you knock those rings into the playing field, and then you use those rings to score, that's affecting the outcome of that match. And so that'll be under a very close review by the refs to make sure that it's not affecting the match. Because if it's affecting the match, you could be disqualified. So what your question was, let me see if I can, is there a part where you get points for taking rings off the poles? So yes, the three posts, the posts over here that start with the rings on it, if you remove those rings, you do get points for that. No, so the field goals are the floor. They're the floor goals. Is that what you mean? Yeah, so I know that, especially online, there was a bunch of questions about the difference between field and floor. So there's not a field goal, there's a floor goal. Does that make sense? If I called it by the wrong name, I apologize. Oh, if you empty the posts? 5 points, yeah. 5 points for them being emptied, yes. For each one, or for all, the ones that are emptied. Corey? Okay, I'll take one more while he's talking. Or one of you two. You? Oh, it's anywhere in here, so that it's touching the floor. So. But can it be over there? Yep. Corey, whenever you're ready.
So what if when you are putting, say if the robot gets broke and you're putting it back in starting position, what if there's rings in both of the squares?
Okay, so if you guys have to touch your robot and then you have to take it back to a legal start, right? His question was if there are rings in both starting positions, where you put your robot. You can put it in either one, but any of the rings that are in that one that you place it in are going to be taken out of play. Yes, that's for the rest of the match. Those rings will be out of play for the rest of the match. Yeah, so I believe the way it works is that it's the first 4, and then it would only drop another score if there was another 4, but we're doing 7 and not 8, so it'll only be one of the first 4. Yes, sorry, you're right. I wasn't very clear on that. Corey, you ready?
All right, so for those of you using Vex Via, and I'm sure that there's many of you because my cell phone signal is completely dead. There was an update to the match schedule. I don't know if you guys have the most current match schedule. If you guys look in your team list for the event and you see 9653C, it is not the current schedule. We're working on getting new schedules printed right now, and we'll deliver those as soon as we can. And then after that, we'll start the matches up as soon as we get the match schedules to everybody. All right, thank you. And I think this is the end of the drivers' meeting. Have fun.
Bye.